Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this, our launch of the shareable carbon literacy training kit for the civil service. My name is Phil Corbell. I'm the co-founder and director of advocacy for the project. People are still coming in, but we've got such a lot to get through. I thought we'd better get on and get the ball rolling for this morning. We hope that you will come away with a full understanding of what's on offer here, our rationale behind it, and perhaps most importantly, we're going to be talking to a whole bunch of civil service colleagues about their experience of carbon literacy and how it's worked for them. So I hope by the time 10:30 comes round that you'll have a good picture of how this thing works on the ground. People are still coming in. But I do say, yeah, I think we better get on. So to start, we will try to get the slides moving. Let's just see about that. There we go. Yeah, a little bit of housekeeping. You'll have spotted already that we are recording, and the particular format we're using means that your videos and mics are turned off. We'd welcome your questions at any point. There are colleagues standing by to answer questions in the Q&A. If we'd use the Q&A as opposed to the chat, that means that we can respond either live or in type. There is a little bit of time at the end for live Q&A, as it were, but we can extend the running time for those that wish to hear more after 10:30. I hope that's okay. This is a big event for us. We've been working on carbon literacy since 2012 when we launched, and we've been working on public sector carbon literacy for well over 2 years now, launching resources, shareable resources across the public sector. But when I wrote this slide, this really meant something. The idea that carbon literacy can have a meaningful place in the competencies and values of the civil service, and to energize and enable civil servants across departments, across offices and agencies to play a meaningful role in tackling the climate crisis is just extraordinary. I wouldn't have believed it. And here we are launching this thing. It is our ambition that carbon literacy needs to be in that place in CPD, in employee inductions, so that it's just part of the working life of all workplaces, and particularly the civil service. And this is what we have here as a launch pad for that whole process, is what we're talking about today. This infographic is something that I've been using in my presentations. A lot of you recognize it. I'll let you read that. Admirably blunt, as you would expect from the Ministry of Defence, as a way of explaining why on earth are we bothered. This summarizes it so well, I thought. And I use it in presentations across sectors within my work, because it lands, well, why are we doing this? And in an effort to further de-jargon, to get into some plain English, really, we can get to basics here, and we need to get this message home, the relevance and impact of this. Again, reframing that, there's no way that we want more extreme weather. And when we recognize that this is coming and that it is a crisis, it comes to our rationale for training. You'd no more send an untrained firefighter into a burning building or than send an untrained surgeon into an operating theatre. We have to use training as the bottom line for reacting to mobilizing for an emergency. So what are we? What is this thing? It's a flexible framework for training. It's climate action training with the emphasis on action. And it's something that can be used really sort of anywhere. to create this idea of a mainstream low carbon culture everywhere. In the same way that the climate crisis impacts on everything, this has to work everywhere. And that's what we've got here. Also, yeah, it's globally unique. So it's something that we can be pretty proud of here. And part of our different approach is that we don't expect people to suddenly adopt a whole new way of being and thinking. It is absolutely about bringing the crisis to where people already are. So throughout carbon literacy training, we frame, forgive the pun, but we frame this alongside people's existing values and priorities. Now, you'll be asking, yeah, what is this thing? Now, this definition it didn't come up with us entirely. We had a working group of trainers, of educators, employers, and campaigners who came up with this definition. Let's just pick that apart a bit. Of course, we need awareness. You need the facts, and we lay out the science. We lay out the bad scenarios of inaction, the consequences of inaction. That all has to be there. But to do that without agency, without the tools, is crazy. So we equip people with the tools to deal with this and make their best contribution. And we have motivation, the relevance piece. Why is this meaningful to me? So much so, I fairly much ban polar bears from this. If polar bears were the answer to sorting out the climate crisis, I think we'd be there already. This isn't about polar bears, it's about us. So the ingredients. This is a day's worth of learning and doing, okay? You can chunk that day how you like. We're also relatively agnostic about learning platforms. Social learning is jargon for relevance. Yep, it's just got to be relevant, beginning, middle, end. We can make it relevant, you know we can make it relevant, but this is essential. Should be delivered by peers. You trust people like yourself more than an outside expert. This is not to preclude outside experts, but this should be led by peers. It should also have colleagues collaborating to dig into this. This shouldn't just be a flat screen exercise or a lecture. There should be active learning. And when you conclude, this is externally verified by us, and learners get a certificate. Also embedded in our values, in the way we do this, is about the positive value of action, and that we need to focus on fair solutions. We need to talk about just transitions. We need to talk about climate justice as well. And also we do ask that anyone involved in the training pays due attention to the emotional impact of the penny dropping. I'm making a presumption that a lot of the people attending today will have had that penny drop moment over climate and will have experienced the emotional impact of that. And I think we have a duty to learners to manage that appropriately and channel it into action. Action is at the end of every piece of carbon literacy training, an individual action and a group action as well. And you explain that, you describe that. That comes back to us as evidence, and it's the basis of that description that we say that you're carbon literate as a learner. And we focus in on workplace learning, workplace actions, I should say. And that's the only price point that need concern you as well. These are pre-accredited courses that we're referring to today. Also, we have other badges. So there's the learner badge as well. You can certify as a trainer should you wish, we don't insist on it. Organizations and departments can also qualify as carbon literate organizations. And for those relevant, you can also qualify as a training organization too. As an example, a snapshot of the hundreds of organizations that we're now working with, that gives you an idea of the breadth of organizations. I like the idea that it was Coronation Street were first off the blocks amongst TV teams, but you have a scan of that and you'll see the breadth of organizations where this is happening. That's us in numbers as of the beginning of the month. Our last 1,000 learners took us about 3 weeks. Our first 1,000, when we started in 2012, took us about 2 years. The demand for this is through the roof, which is very pleasing for anyone concerned in climate change. That figure at the bottom right, is an estimate given to us by Jacobs Engineering of the likely energy saving from a program like this, if appropriately supported in its aftermath. I can answer questions about the other numbers, should you so wish. Another thing we often get asked is about who should train, and we far prefer that this should be in-house to maximize that peer-to-peer piece. But it can be outsourced. There's a great body of external trainers who could help things along, should you wish. We don't train, we can't mark our own homework. So we support the creation and delivery of the training, and then we do quality control through accreditation. Another frequent question I get asked is about outcomes. What is this? What comes off at the back of this? And it is hard to quantify the greenhouse gas impact. One day we'll get the budget to do that. Academics tell me that this is a very complex chain of attribution, etc., etc. But that estimate of 5 to 15% came from Jacobs based on projects that they had measured. So it really is about culture shift, and we have some good little research papers and data to show about these sorts of outcomes, that the motivation, confidence of learners grows significantly through this training. And really, this is the upshot, that anyone can optimize their impact on the climate crisis, whatever their skills and whatever their position. At a macro level, we have to have this. If we're going to get to net zero in the time that we need, without a broad-based low carbon culture, people knowing that this isn't just a compliance issue, that they've got a stake in this, that it's relevant to the things they care about, it's going to work better. We can move faster, we can go bigger. And as you know, we have to do that. So that's a skim, a very rapid skim of what we do here. I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Natalia, who can tell you a bit more about I'm sorry, I'm just giving my colleagues an absolute heart attack here. jumping the timeline completely. Not going to do that. We'll go to Natalia in about 10 minutes. Meanwhile, sticking to the script this time, I'd like to bring Patrick in from BEIS, who is the civil servant who's really made this all possible. Hi, Patrick.
Hi, Phil.
I got it right in the end, anyhow. Good to see you. So, Patrick, we're giving you this pole position as the person who commissioned us to create the shareable training kits that we're going to describe in a moment. Where did you first come across this, Patrick?
Oh gosh, so I think probably back in 2014, 15, when Manchester City City Council were getting involved, and there was a pledge as part of the devolution deal that they were negotiating at the time to be a carbon literate city. And my team is involved in the devolution deals from a net zero and energy perspective, and we were like, I wonder what that is. And so we came and had a chat with you back then. And that's where it all started a long time ago.
Indeed. And it was a nice thing that we got to know each other through. Sorry, what's your job, Patrick? Should have started with that, really.
Sorry, yes. So I'm head of local net zero within BEIS. So I work with local authorities, community groups and others to help them deliver net zero in the round rather than specifically on one element or another. And the team I'm part of, it also covers the public sector decarbonisation. So we are a small group, but they are funding now the public sector decarbonisation scheme, which is £1 billion, helping anybody in the public sector to decarbonise their building stock.
Yeah, so another tiny brief within within the work. More seriously though, what to you is the significance of carbon literacy within that mission that you just described?
Well, so I mean, I come from a background where I used to do a lot of behaviour change work for Transport for London. So I set up the school travel plan unit, the workplace travel plan unit in for the whole of London. And we always had this mantra that to get behaviour change, you needed a step 1 of awareness and a step 2 of acceptance. And carbon literacy provides both of those. It gives you the awareness, and through the pledges, the pledges are the form of acceptance that you have a role to play in this. So for me, it was a beautifully shaped front end of behavior change. It got people thinking about it, and it got people pledging to do something about it, which was the first stage to change. But I think the penny really dropped for me on carbon literacy when I was at the BBC for a conference on a sports conference in the middle of Beast from the East. And the BBC were talking about how they had been involved in this. BBC North had been involved in this. And as a result of it, the director of BBC North had created Albert, a footprint for carbon standards in production of TV. And then BAFTA said, well, we're rolling that out to the whole of the industry. So this sort of chain reaction. And I was sat next to a lady from Sky Sports who said, oh, we use generators on all of our mobile sports broadcasts. And the guy from the FA said, well, we'll just tell the Premier League clubs to give you a plug so you can plug your trucks in, and then you can get rid of all those diesel generators. And it was watching these people interact over carbon literacy to find a really practical solution to which was only about people talking to each other. You know, it could have happened in any situation, but nobody had thought to ask the question. And for me, that
or had the motivation. You know, it is exactly the connecting your nous, your skill set, and your position. It's exactly that sort of chain reaction that we feed on.
So all the Premier League clubs now are required to provide electrical connection to their stadium for outside broadcasters, rather than having 6 or 7 diesel generators.
And if Dale Vince has anything to do with it, they'll all be powered by green energy as well. So that's another story. But yeah, so you could see it land and being a catalyst for this. And then you had a realization that there was a little flaw in the way that we were doing things, because what we used to do, and still do with many organizations, is ask them to design the appropriate training against the carbon literacy standard, our training framework. And you went, hang on, Phil, I'll let you pick up the story from there, this moment.
Well, I mean, coming from the civil service and the public sector, and the scale of the number of organizations that we need to engage, there was no way each of these organizations was ever going to get to a point where they were going to engage at that level and develop their own courses. So we had a conversation, and you know, it's like any of these things, sitting in a room deciding how we can best do this, and getting to the point where, well, if we can give you a sum of money, can you create courses that are generic enough for all of these organizations to pick them up? And if they want to do a small amount of tailoring, so, you know, and we were talking about the public sector, so we were talking about prisons, we were talking about the NHS, we were talking about local authorities and the civil service, police forces. Yeah, I mean, it's a really broad range of organizations and employees within those organizations. So, you know, when you look at the NHS, the management side, the clinical side, so there are a whole range of different groups within each of these types of organization, and some of those are better done horizontally. So you might want to bring all of the clerical staff from hospitals across Greater Manchester together, rather than the clinical staff and in one hospital all doing it. So we were looking at different ways to do it, and we came up with this idea of generic, well, not generic, tailored courses, but for sectors. that we could fund the development of, take the development costs out of it for the organizations. Because again, when you're talking about awareness and acceptance, the people that most need it are the people who are least likely to pay for it. And therefore, if you get over that barrier, you open this up to a whole lot of organizations who will start it because they can without any financial commitment. And when they realize how good it is, they will take it forward.
I think you've summarized
that. Was theory.
Yeah, theory, it's practice, mate. Now, this is exactly what we've gone and done across those multiple sectors, and we're talking specifically about civil service now. And that's just what we've got. Natalia's going to explain that. Within BEIS itself, what's just to wrap things up with you, Patrick, how are things rolling there, having started the ball rolling yourselves?
Well, so I mean, like all of these things in the civil service, and many of my colleagues on the line will recognize this, it's not easy to develop these things and learn things. We have a course, we have, of course, the climate science team in BEIS, so they wanted to scrutinize absolutely everything to make sure that it was 110% accurate. And yes, I know percent means 100, not 110. But I mean, so it's taken us a while to develop the course, but we've now got trainers, we've now got courses running. We've got the first directorate being trained, I think in March of this year, so in a couple of weeks' time. So we're training trainers, we're doing the training in-house. We've got a course that everybody in BEIS has signed up to and agreed to. So yeah, we're getting there. Slower than I had hoped, but
it's really rolling now, though.
Is.
No, it's really rolling now. And the other thing that's happening as the front runners, you're also allowing colleagues from elsewhere in the civil service to come and sit in where relevant as well. It's part of our great strength is that we have that spirit of collaboration. Patrick, our thanks. There's a load more to the story, needless to say, but thanks so much for backing us up here. And just watch this thing roll now. So thanks again.
No problem at all, and good luck to the other departments as they roll it out, and come and talk to us anytime.
Thanks, Patrick, again. Natalia, now it actually is your turn instead of giving you a heart attack from before. Cheers.
Thanks, Phil. Morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. My name's Natalia Phipps, and I'm the Head of Sectoral Development for the project. I'm just going to go through in a bit more detail about the Civil Service Toolkit and what it involves and actually what a toolkit is. So we're throwing this phrase around quite a bit. So just to go into a bit more detail of what a toolkit is. So as Patrick was just mentioning, the whole purpose and theory behind the toolkits is that they maximise the speed and adoption of carbon literacy in the sector that they're delivered for. So by having these pre-accredited courses, it takes away that time, cost and barrier of you having to come up with your own course from scratch. It stops you from having to reinvent the wheel. And it's really taken away those barriers which may stand in the way of organisations like picking this up and running with it. So the toolkits are designed to be sector specific, and the development of the toolkits always involves representatives from the sector. So for us to come up with these materials, we went through a number of focus groups and writing groups, trying and testing the materials, evaluating them, redrafting them, all with people from the civil service. So they really are written by the sector and for the sector. And this ensures as well that the materials cover the most important and relevant topics and really makes them unique to each sector. There's also the inclusion of customizable slides, which allows for further tailoring to include local and organisational case studies. And this really helps learners to relate more to the climate crisis and increase their motivation for taking action. So each sector will have a slightly different toolkit, which they end up rolling out due to these customizable sections. And it really keeps that relevance front and centre. And everything which is needed to deliver the training is included within the toolkit. So you don't need to create any additional resources, just those customizable sections, as I mentioned, just adapting those. And I'll just go on to now what's actually included within the toolkit. So there is a detailed trainer manual, which contains comprehensive instructions and explanations of all the training materials. So we always say that you don't need to be an expert to deliver carbon literacy training, just to have a bit of background knowledge and a passion for the subject matter is always beneficial. And also, yeah, being a relatively good communicator and be able to, facilitate conversations and present information. But you by no means need to be an expert. And that training manual is really there to kind of support and guide you throughout the training, give you all the facts and the figures you need when learners might ask you some questions. There's a slide deck which we'll use to deliver the training. It's a full slide deck, so it's got all of the visual information that you need to present in an effective way. There is an interactive activity pack, which is used to enhance learning and the experience of activities within the course. So it's not just sitting down on Teams for a whole day of someone talking through slides. It's going into breakout rooms, it's having facilitated discussions, going through activities and games and really getting engaged in the subject matter and being able to voice your opinions and have discussions with your colleagues. There's also a getting started pack, which contains all the information you need to get the information to get the training off the ground. So things like all the administration needed before and after the follow-up of the course. So that's all included. And there's also the action evidence forms, which you'll eventually use to give to your learners and make sure that they are getting certified. That evidence then gets sent back to us at the project, and we certify your staff as being carbon literate. So how is it delivered? It's a day's worth of training, as Phil mentioned, but it can be split any way that you like. So if it was to be delivered online, we tend to recommend delivering in 2 half days. It can be quite intense, sitting on Teams or Zoom for a whole day. It's quite nice to do, say, like 2 morning sessions in a week. It's designed to be delivered for either face-to-face classroom learning or virtual learning. So if you do wish to deliver it online, which is where most of the training is happening at the moment, we recommend about a maximum of 20 learners per session. You can make sessions bigger than that if you wish to, but we would generally recommend having about 1 extra trainer or facilitator per 5 members of staff. So as Phil was mentioning before, it is really designed to be peer-to-peer training, so delivered internally within your department. However, if you wish for an external trainer to come in and deliver the first few sessions, then we can talk to you about the process of that as well and how that might work. And the reason why we're really trying to encourage this peer-to-peer element is so that it really cascades throughout the civil service and is a really sustainable model of growth, so that you can train one cohort of people and then perhaps they can become your main trainer kind of group to really form the basis, so that it doesn't all fall on one particular department or one particular, cohort of staff. It's shared responsibility, and it really helps to keep the momentum up and keep the numbers kind of rolling through. And yeah, it's just that cost to accredit is £10 per staff member. But the toolkit is free to access as it's been funded to do so. And this is just a snapshot of all the toolkits which are now have been rolled out. So we've got ones for local authorities, universities, social housing, healthcare, automotive and museums, with many more in the pipeline. And we're really excited that we can now add the civil service to this list. So I'm going to pass over now to my colleague, Will, who's going to talk a little bit more about the toolkit in detail.
Thanks, Natalia. I'm Will, and I've been working on the development of the toolkit. So it's a flexible and adaptable framework that's designed to help to guide your learners towards taking action in line with your department's priorities and ambitions. Here's what you'll find within the course. To achieve low carbon culture change, you need to say why it matters and equip people with the tools to act. So the course starts with a basic grounding in climate change science and impacts, and the co-benefits associated with taking action, before moving on to policy and your department's carbon footprint, and how your staff can integrate climate change into their decision-making and role. At the end of the course, each learner commits to taking 1 significant individual action and 1 significant group action to lower the carbon footprint of your department. The toolkit has been partly co-written by BEIS and piloted and tested by BEIS and the Office of Government Property, and we are very grateful to them for all of their insights and support. Next slide, please. Let's take a very brief look at a few of the slides. This slide from the climate science and impact section shows where current global policies will lead to in terms of global temperature rise. It shows the huge difference between where we are and where we need to be. We regularly update the toolkit to stay up to date with the latest science and policy. Next slide, please. Throughout the course, we've included a number of blue slides that are designed to be edited to tailor the content to your department, such as your department's policy and carbon footprint. And if you want to add more content beyond these editable slides, that's absolutely fine. We can guide you through this process. Next slide, please. There's also a strong emphasis on group inquiry, engaging and collaborating with peers. In this activity, learners are divided into small groups to come up with ideas as to how they can collaboratively reduce one of your department's largest carbon hotspots. I'll now hand back to Phil so that we can hear from our guests about their experiences of using the toolkit.
Thank you. One of our great strengths is that this is rolling already. There need be no mysteries about how this lands, because you can talk to people that are already doing it. Now, I stand to be corrected because the pace of change is so great within the project, but I think the complete list of departments and government agencies is BEIS, Cabinet Office, the Office of Government Property, Ministry of Justice, Department for Transport, and the Foreign Office, embassies. We'll hear a bit about some of those in a minute, but also the Environment Agency are rolling carbon literacy across their entire staff over the next 2 years. And most of these people are ever so happy to share their experience, even to invite people in where possible to sit in on all or part of the training to see how it goes. And to that end, I'd like to convene a panel of existing practitioners. So we welcome Monica from the British Embassy in Zagreb. Hi, Monica. And we have Jay from the Office of Government Property. Hi, Jay, and Maisie, Sheriff from the Department of Transport, and hopefully Claire Bond as well from the Department of Transport, although we were having some glitches. Oh, hi, Claire. Hopefully you've made that too. If I can just go around between the three of you, we'll just describe what you've done with, oh, and Maisie, sorry, yes, sorry. I forgot Maisie, this is terrible. I must read my notes better. So sorry, Maisie. If I can go around and ask each of you briefly, what have you done with carbon literacy? Monica, what did you do?
So what we did, I'll just briefly tell the story that I've told several times already. So we met during a project that the British Embassy in Zagreb was financing, and Carbon Literacy Trust was one of the partners. So Phil participated in one of the webinars related to climate education project that the organization was doing. And then in the end of the webinar, the two of us had a conversation and we came up with this idea that British Embassy Zagreb could become the first carbon literate embassy. And the story somehow started there and developed gradually throughout 2021. Where then you introduced us to this toolkit that was very graciously financed and rolled out by BEIS. So we used their materials. And then you explained this process of peer-to-peer learning, which was quite daunting at the beginning, because I was thinking, okay, so I am going to have to teach my colleagues and I am not a scientist. But then you did show the material to us, and it seemed like there was this process where you're being guided through the learning, and it made us feel a bit better. So I asked a few colleagues from the embassy to take basically the training during the summer, and we used an external organization for that. So the first 8 colleagues at the British Embassy Zagreb took the training by an external organization, and then we prepared the training for the other colleagues at the embassy, and we did that training in person in October 2021. And our colleagues at the British Embassy Zagreb now are certified, and the British Embassy Zagreb is the first carbon literate embassy. We also then organized training online for our British Embassy colleagues from Central Europe. So we have another group of people now certified. And now the idea and the plan and the hope is for them to organize these types of training for their colleagues at other British embassies around Europe. So to cascade this idea further.
Fantastic. Monica, we'll come back to you. Thank you for that introduction. We'll try to double head this at the Department of Transport with Claire and Maisie. What have you been doing with carbon literacy? Maybe I'll go Maisie first as your mic's on.
Yeah, so carbon literacy has been quite a big thing within DFT, and it initially originated in about January of last year. So the Department for Transport, we've got a carbon management programme, and this was initiated in line with PAS 2080. So for a bit of context, PAS 2080 is a global standard for managing infrastructure carbon, and there was an infrastructure carbon review in about 2013, and that essentially identified that infrastructure is responsible for over 50% of the UK's carbon emissions. So obviously the Department for Transport, we've got the likes of HS2, and we've got loads of massive infrastructure projects, and it's quite tricky to, you know, have that information out there and know how responsible we are and not actually act upon it. So within this carbon management programme, there were a variety of different work streams, and one of them was all to do with carbon management capability and then creating a low carbon culture. So taking part in the training and rolling it out just seemed like an absolute no-brainer, because it tied in really nicely with our objectives, it tied in nicely with PAS 2080. So that's what we did. And I did a bit of a policy paper and I explored the different options that were out there. And to be honest, no one was doing what the Carbon Literacy Project were doing at all. Yes, there were different ways of doing environmental training, but it wasn't that carbon based. It was mainly kind of about saving the bees, recycling, that type of thing. And it just wasn't a lot all about reducing carbon and cutting our own personal carbon footprints. So that was just a really obvious route to go down. So within DFT, it had a variety of different working groups, and Claire sat on that, and we developed the training for DFT audience, and we kind of got resounding yeses across every single board because it tied in so nicely with initiatives that we already had, kind of departmental objectives, that type of thing. So we had working groups kind of adding to the training to make it more suitable for DFT audience. We had a variety of different pilots, and we've then got 24 trainers who are actually just normal DFT staff who take time out of their working week to help deliver the training, and Claire's one of them. So it's been a really great journey so far, and if Claire would like to build upon that, you're more than welcome to.
Yeah, Claire, so leading the training, what's your post within DFT so we can get some of that perspective as well?
Sure, I'm a sustainability manager within DFT, so I work in our group property team, which is all about reducing the environmental impacts of our own offices and sites that we manage. So when I heard about the work the carbon management programme were doing on carbon capability, it really linked in with my area of work as well. We've recently published an operational sustainability strategy, and one key area we identified in that was raising awareness and knowledge and understanding of our staff about what they can do to help. Now, my remit's a bit broader than just carbon. It does cover the likes of the bees and the waste, but this was a really good way of tackling kind of the questions everyone has about carbon and what we're doing to reduce that and really kind of like practice what we preach. So that's what we've tried to weave into the toolkit. We took the opportunity on those like blue slides that Will mentioned to adapt those to really highlight the strategic priorities we have in our department, give some case studies of sort of stuff we're doing in our own offices, but also on the projects. And that's really made it come to life for people on the training, and gets the discussion going about, oh yes, I've worked on this and this was really interesting. So that's been really good.
Great, thanks, Claire. We'll come back to you for a bit more detail. Jay is joining us from the Office of Government Property. I think so. The brief of the Office of Government Property is that little matter of the government estate. Yeah. So where did carbon literacy come in for you, and what have you been doing?
Yeah, so probably good to give an overview of Office of Government Property and my role. So I'm the capability lead in the property profession team within the Office of Government Property. So that's essentially looking at learning and development across the property function and profession within the civil service. The Office of Government Property itself sits within Cabinet Office. So of course, in terms of the carbon literacy training, this was an excellent opportunity as part of our sustainability learning offer in consideration of the net zero targets and also the large estate that government property has as well. So it really seemed like a good interactive training, where attendees could really get involved and learn loads as well.
So have you been delivering the training? What has the office been doing?
Yeah, I have been delivering the training. So we've delivered 2 so far, with 1 next week, which is sold out. They seem very popular. So that's always a good sign. We're now going to be focusing more moving forward on that train the trainer model that's been mentioned, just so we can maximise the amount of people that can deliver it across different departments within the property profession.
Great. So this is an example of what your office actually cutting through multiple departments and aspects of government as well. So this is another of these cascades going on. Thanks, Jay. I'm just going to go around each of you and ask, how's it been going? What are a standout moment from the training that you've delivered that sort of captures the impact of this thing that we're talking about? We'll go around in the same order. Monica, you've delivered that training. What a standout moment?
Standout moment. Well, I think we had an interesting group of people because we were training the whole embassy together. That means the ambassador and people from corporate services and the driver and the residence manager. So people with different roles. And I think that in the morning, people came to the training thinking, is this for me? And then, as the day proceeded, people realized, yeah, it is for me. And each of us have a different role to play. And each of us can do something about the way that our organization is being run. So the residence manager started thinking how we could reduce, the carbon footprint of the residents. And the drivers were thinking, do we need to reduce the number of rides? And the ambassador was thinking, what trips should happen and what trips shouldn't happen. Should we introduce a permanent working from home day to reduce the carbon footprint of our organization in different ways? Corporate services was thinking, what do we do about the heating? It's just fantastic that every person can think of something they can do in their role, and then of course in their own lives to make a difference. That for me was the standout moment. I think this mood change that you see throughout the day, because we did it in one day, where people are first thinking, what am I doing here? Then they're completely depressed when they go through the science. They're thinking that we're all doomed and these different scenarios. And then by the end of the day, everybody's feeling empowered. Okay, there is something to be done about this.
So it sounds absolutely optimal, especially that scenario you describe where there are people sitting down saying, why am I here? And by the end of the day, they're on it, which is exactly what we want to achieve. Thanks, Monica. Meanwhile, at Department of Transport, Maisie, what would be a standout moment for you?
It wasn't necessarily within the training itself.
Yeah.
But it was actually when I'd advertised the training sessions. So initially when we were thinking about rolling it out, I developed a big comms plan, and it was a case of utilising the intranet that we've got, different networks, doing podcasts, our environment network, really, really quite in-depth comms plan. But I then just sent an email out to kind of the majority of the department saying, this is what carbon literacy training is. These are the sessions. You can sign up here via Eventbrite. And I really didn't expect much out of it, but 20 sessions sold out in under 6 hours, and that was about 240 tickets because we've got 12 people per session, and the demand that we've got is obscene. We've got a carbon literacy mailbox and it's constantly full of people asking when they can join a session, and I have to say I'm really sorry, but they're sold out. We've got wait lists on Eventbrite as well, and yeah, it's really, really great to see how eager people are to get involved. So we've had about 280 people go through the training since early October, and in line with COP26. So that was from the 1st of November up until the 12th, kind of on the working days. That's when we deliver the training. So that was to really kind of drive home how important it was. So our next steps and what we're doing kind of off the back of that is that we're looking to implement kind of our own carbon literacy champions, so within the groups within DFT. So is we've got those 24 centralised members of staff who are delivering the training. So that's kind of me, Claire, 22 other people. It's really tricky to accommodate that demand when we've got our own jobs to do. So it's hard because I see the demands there. I know that we've got the training there to roll out, but we don't have the capacity to do it from a staff perspective. So I'm now exploring the potential to have designated carbon literacy trainers in each of the groups that we've got within DFT. So we've got about 6 groups with a few hundred people in each. And the way that will go is that instead of coming to myself and Claire and signing up through Eventbrite and us rolling out centrally, instead, they'll go to their kind of designated carbon literacy champion within the group and say, okay, our team, we want to have an away day, we want to do carbon literacy, can you please put a session on for us? So that can at least accommodate the demand and also alleviate some pressure off us. So yeah, the demand has been really, really great, but it's a shame that we can't necessarily accommodate it.
So a note to upstairs, this should be part of the job, not a bolt-on. But that's for me to say, you couldn't possibly say that. But Claire, a standout moment for you?
Yeah, so I think Maisy's right with the demand, but I think for myself actually delivering it, I noticed that journey that I think was mentioned before, that Monica mentioned, of people being a bit shocked and then actually coming round to saying, okay, we can do something about this, and sort of being rallied. And everyone has often, the feedback's been they've really enjoyed the activities and the videos. I think they find those really engaging and interactive. And what I have noticed as being a success is that there's a part at the end about talking about carbon and having carbon conversations. And through day-to-day sort of work in meetings, team meetings and things, I've noticed other colleagues who've been on this carbon literacy training, not necessarily a session I've led, but a carbon literacy training, have mentioned it and have sort of shared, saying, oh, I did this cool carbon calculator tool to find out my personal footprint, or I learned that this is actually not good to do or is good to do, sort of thing. And people just sort of have slipped it into casual conversation, team meetings and things. And that, I think, was quite nice for me, sort of sitting there thinking, oh, well, I know exactly where that's come from. They've been on this training and they're recommending it to other people to go on. And
flows,
they're starting to share that. Yeah, exactly.
Superb. Claire, that's a great insight. Thank you. And Jay, a standout moment for you?
So I guess kind of similar to what Claire said, not one particular standout moment, but I think it's just been the level of engagement and discussion, particularly around the different types of learning throughout the days. So the videos and the exercises, two that come to mind is people discussing their own carbon footprint as a result of the calculator, and the carbon footprint of food as well. And I think it's the interesting thing about how property is delivering it is you're getting people from all different roles throughout property in all different departments. So it's really interesting to see people's understanding develop and that motivation as well throughout the training.
Great. We're running out of time, but very, very quickly, one thing that civil service colleagues interested in this should bear in mind, one top tip really quickly. Monica.
You have to do your homework after the training to be certified. And my tip would be to do it as soon as possible, either during the day or right after, because that's the way to get certified.
Thank you. Maisie?
Well, I've had a variety of different departments and arm's length bodies get in touch and ask how to get on with the training, how to actually start it. And the first thing I say is get in touch with Dave Coleman at the Carbon Literacy Project, because that's what that was kind of how I got into it, through BEIS. And that's actually what I say. I say email Dave Coleman. He set up a call as soon as I'd reached out in early last year, had all the information, had so many different kind of PDFs, documents, links, everything. And that's all I say. That's definitely the most helpful thing.
Thanks, Maisie. One top tip, Claire?
I'd say make it bespoke to you. Obviously the structure's there, but definitely make it your own. Don't just run it as a training off the bat that's kind of standardized. That it is set up so that it can be tailored, and really think about what you're trying to get out of the training from it, because the structure's there to be able to achieve that and to really link it into your own department's policies, strategic aims, that sort of thing. So yeah, I wouldn't just take it as an off-the-shelf thing. I'd really think about how you're using it and what you're trying to get out of it, because it's absolutely set up to help people do that.
Thank you, Claire, brilliantly. And last but by no means least, Jay, one top tip.
So I think the toolkit's really good, provides a lot of guidance for the trainer, and all the useful information's there. If for the first time you're delivering it, I think it's a good idea to deliver it with someone else, just because there's a lot of information, and yeah, I think that's a really good way to deliver it. That would be my main tip.
Fantastic. Thank you, Monica, Maisie, Claire, and Jay. Power to your elbows, as it were. Can't thank you enough for the support and the initiative that you've taken, and your role today. Really appreciated. Many thanks. Over to Will to find out about what we can do next.
Thanks, Phil. So how can you get started? The best way to get started is to get in touch at gov@carbonliteracy.com, where we can arrange a chat to answer any questions that you may have before sending you the toolkit. So as we've alluded to, we strongly recommend that a few staff who are interested in becoming carbon literate go on a carbon literacy course to get a flavour of the training. Once this core group of staff are certified as carbon literate, these staff can be the initial trainers. We're also planning to run a trainer orientation session soon to give you further confidence and support in delivering the training. There's also a wealth of information and support on our website, carbonliteracy.com, and on our civil service webpage, which my colleague has now posted in the chat. I'll now hand back to Phil to chair the Q&A.
Thanks very much indeed. We've had a range of questions in. A lot have been about, hi BEIS, can we talk to you? We'll connect you to the relevant folk at BEIS. Whilst Patrick has helped initiate this, there are other colleagues at BEIS who've been a bit more involved in the delivery of the project there. But there's a general feeling of, yep, come and sit in. Yeah, that spirit of collaboration and sharing. And even to talk to some of the folk, to Claire, Jay, Maisie and Monica, about their experience, you've sensed their enthusiasm there. Other questions that have come up? Yep, mention of action in Scotland. We're happy to share the materials across civil service, across the nations as well, and we can connect you to relevant folk there. Natalia, you've been looking at questions. Anything that's worth sharing outside of this?
Yeah, there's a question from Tim Saxon, which we've answered, but just might be useful just to go through again, which is that he's interested to know how you see this being rolled out to large staff champions networks, if 20 people per session is the ideal number. He said that they have about 400 or 500 champions with the network still growing. So I guess it's that kind of mass rollout question, Phil.
Yeah. Yeah, I would pass the ball neatly over to the Environment Agency, who are training. Well, they got 7,000. They've got a good few thousand. They're doing over 2 years. We use a cascade model. Train your own trainers, and what Maisie was talking about as well. Become reactive to the demand, because this can be picked up and delivered by relative newcomers to training, certainly. And the detail within the manual makes this very, very easy. One of our first local government officers to trial the pack for that sector picked it up 2 days before they actually implemented it. And she said in retrospect, it held your hand at every point. Job done, I think. So you've got the confidence to hand this to people to lead the sessions. What Jay was saying also about buddying up, a less experienced trainer could assist a more experienced trainer to build their confidence, then they can lead. So those models are there. The largest cohort I know of, it was an international academic cohort, had about 140 people on a virtual training, but they had about 20 or 30 facilitators for the breakouts. So you still needed that hands-on element for the conversational, the more active and interactive parts of it. Anything else we should bring forward at this point, Nat?
Just kind of a general kind of how do I get started? I think in some of the Q&A, I think because we've only had an hour today to cover what we wanted to cover, and we were really keen on showing people the why should they do this and the stories from all of our guest speakers. I guess a lot of the process of carbon literacy still raises a lot of questions. So I would really just reiterate what Will said, is get in touch with us and we can set up a meeting to talk to you about how you can do this within your individual department. Every department is different. They have different priorities, different timelines and budgets. And we can really discuss that with you and talk through the different ways that different departments have done it. We can also put you in touch with the relevant people, so that, as Phil said, the Environment Agency and how ambitious they were, that information is just, really useful to know when you're beginning this journey. So don't feel like you're kind of alone in this. Please just drop us an email.
Of course, as we're running out of time, we're getting more questions in. What we're going to do, we'll draw the official program to a close imminently, but we've got some great questions about how you can use a Launchpad shorter training, and we'll come to that. A good question from Esther. We'll come to that after past, and also about carbon literate organizations. So we will deal with those questions, but I think what we'll do for now, unless my colleagues wish to contradict me, which they can, I think we'll draw the official program to a close now. But for those of you that wish to stay for answering a few more questions, to post some more questions, feel free, we'll do that. Can't stress enough how usable this is, and that there is a critical mass of practice within the civil service that you can tap into to see how it works for you and your colleagues. You've got a sense of that excitement and impact, I'm sure, from our speakers today. So our thanks to Patrick, to Claire, to Jay, to Maisie and Monica for your pioneering roles in this and for joining us today. And there are many other colleagues who are involved as well. Good luck, what can I say? This is something quite special. You'll see it work in your departments, and we look forward to hearing how it goes with you, which is the official goodbye. And we'll crack on with some questions now. Thanks for attending, but do hang on while we go through the questions. Thank you.